To you, it's Pushing the Limits. You could be listening on the FMAM dial. It could be on TikTok or Twitch or, of course, the Occupy Democrats Network. We ask that you subscribe for $5 on there and subscribe to my personal YouTube page, which is at PTL Radio Show, one of the fastest growing shows, I would say, across the country. And I appreciate all of you for tuning in. Boy, do we have a lot to get to today. We're going to talk about Ronna McDaniel. It appears as though, and I can't confirm this, that NBC will not actually be hiring her as a paid contributor, but we have a lot of people that have been speaking out on it. We'll get to that here in a little bit. And we got David Pollack, host of the David Pollack Show, right-wing conservative talk show host, joining us here in a few. I want to start by talking about this bridge collapse that took place in Baltimore. First of all, I'm putting together the show yesterday, as I always do, late at night. And I'm watching all the breaking news unfold about this bridge collapse, a terrible tragedy. And the first thing to say, and the most important thing to say, if you're a decent human being, would be, my heart goes out to all these people who have lost their lives and their families, who had to wake up this morning and hear about this awful, awful news. A terrible tragedy. I can't even imagine what it must have been being on that bridge in the last few moments of someone's life. It's just horrible. Terrible tragedy, and it's an accident. It was not on purpose. Doesn't mean that people can't be held to account, but it appears as though the two people who were in charge of that large vessel that hit that bridge certainly were responsible by mistake, but there's no indication that it was done on purpose. I want to get that out of the way right now. And a terrible tragedy, right? Just an atrocious tragedy. But it seems as though when tragedy strikes, Republicans want to use it and try to attack Democrats. And this is certainly no exception, because on social media and even on television today, they want to blame Joe Biden for this bridge collapse. Folks, I'm not making this up. I have the audio to play it for you. The boat lost power, and at least those on that vessel called Mayday, and the bridge was shut down, and more lives were saved, thank God. And the mayor, in my opinion, has done a fantastic job in holding press conferences and showing compassion and thanking those. But if you watch Newsmax, which I would never watch because they're despicable people, these are the people that said the Dominion voting machines were responsible for Joe Biden winning the 2020 election. They're despicable. And Nancy Mace is also a disgrace. She's a despicable human being as well. So a Newsmax host this morning, while interviewing Nancy Mace, trying to blame the infrastructure bill, I'm not making this up, on this bridge collapse. Now, they want to blame COVID vaccines. They want to blame DEI. They want to blame asylum seekers. I'll get to that. Here is a host on Newsmax blaming the infrastructure bill in a way for this bridge collapse. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. Have a listen to this.
Sure, you'll hear the Democrats have a press release and conference somewhere today or tomorrow about the need for $1 trillion infrastructure program after all the other ones. And that's my question to you. It seems like we do have these infrastructure bills, lots of money in it. I mean, I've been under bridges. They're horrible to look at. You look and you see rust. If you drive over bridges, you see things you are like, am I going to make it over this? The bridges are definitely old. The roads are old. But why, after all these bills, after all the money, do we still have really old bridges and really old roads?
Okay, let me be very clear to this turd, because that's what he is. He's despicable. He's blaming a bridge collapse, which it was clearly an accident, and this vessel hit this bridge, and that's why it went down. And any bridge most likely would have gone down. And he's trying to say because there's rust on some of our bridges that he goes over or under or whatever, that somehow the infrastructure bill, that was, by the way, a bipartisan bill that Nancy Mace voted for, and trying to blame that on what took place in Baltimore in tragedy. This shameless individual, this host, and Nancy Mace, once bragged about a project that was part of the infrastructure bill that she voted against, by the way. Now she's criticizing the same bill. It's embarrassing. This is a terrible, terrible tragedy. My heart goes out to the victims. But yet, Republicans, some, luckily not the majority, like those on Newsmax, want to blame the infrastructure bill on what happened. We know what happened. It was pilot error, for lack of a better term. The boat struck the bridge. There's video of the boat striking the bridge. Innocent people lost their lives. It's a tragedy. It had nothing to do with Pete Buttigieg. It had nothing to do with Joe Biden. It had nothing to do with Democrats. And it had everything to do with a boat striking a bridge. Why is that so hard for people to understand? It had nothing to do with DEI or any of that other stuff. Now, Fox News' Maria Bartiromo, who obviously I'm not a very big fan of because she also spreads blatant misinformation, tried to make a link between this horrible accident and tragedy to a wide open border. Folks, you cannot make this stuff up. This was on Fox News this morning.
Let me also get your take on what's going on in terms of world affairs. The White House has issued a statement on this saying that there's no indication of a nefarious intent in the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. The ship involved in the collapse of the bridge is 948 feet long, called the Dolly, a Singaporean flagged container. But of course, you've been talking a lot about the potential for wrongdoing or potential for foul play given the wide open border. That is why you have been so adamant. Why has the Republicans had such a hard time securing this border? The president says he's not going to take his executive action.
There was no foul play. They've already said there was no foul play. Yet she's going on Fox News trying to make a correlation between wide open borders and a terrible tragedy that has taken place in Baltimore. This isn't about being triggered. This isn't about, liberal, right wing, left wing. It's about right and wrong. As Americans, we should be upset or disappointed or whatever word you want to use at the fact that we had this terrible tragedy that took place in the middle of the night where a boat hits a bridge and it collapses and innocent people lost their lives. And we want to say that by the way, they're not wide open borders, but they want to say wide open borders had something to do with this. I don't know. I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. It's irresponsible. And quite frankly, and these people that are on the airwaves that call themselves professionals, to me, it's despicable and it's disgusting. Again, my heart goes out to the victims of this bridge collapse because it's horribly tragic and it's terrible. No family member should ever have to wake up in the morning and have to learn of a loved one, a friend, a husband, maybe one of your kids, whatever the case may be, that was killed in this bridge collapse. It's terrible, and my heart goes out to them. All right, to talk about this and a little bit more, there's certainly a lot of Donald Trump news to be going over today in the coming days. Always a pleasure to have David Pollack joining us on the show. We know him from the David Pollack Show. In fact, he just interviewed George Santos. I actually had to listen to that interview. David, it is a pleasure having you on, my friend. How you doing?
You didn't have to listen. I appreciate that you listened. Nobody was forcing you to, but I appreciate it.
I thought you did a good job there. I maybe would not have been as nice as you were, but I appreciated the interview. All right, I didn't know I was going to start the interview with this, David.
It's all good. I'm good.
Yeah. Thank you. So this bridge collapse, obviously, we both agree it's a terrible tragedy, right? Innocent people losing their lives. And I'm not saying Democrats in their lifetime have never used a tragedy to gain political points. I'm not going to make that claim here. But you have Maria Bartiromo on Fox News saying that wide open borders is correlated to this. You've got a Newsmax host that's blaming the infrastructure bill. I mean, to me, this is it's embarrassing. I mean, what do you make of some of these people on the right that want to blame Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg for a boat that crashes into a bridge?
There's so many different things, and I'm trying to make sure I'm catching my footing on exactly how I want to proceed. You're exactly right. It is a tragedy. Obviously, we whether you pray or you don't pray or you think or whatever you want to do for the people who are lost, obviously do those things. Look, the boat hit a bridge. I don't know where the breakdown occurred. Obviously, there's going to have to be investigations. That bridge collapsed. It was horrific. The boat had power issues. They were calling for maydays. How long did they have before the boat hit the bridge? Why wasn't the road closed? Did somebody not communicate something? It was the middle of the night. Maybe there wasn't fully staffed in locations. there's going to have to be a fact-finding operation going on here, and they're going to have to figure out where the breakdown was so this can never occur again. I mean, imagine driving across a bridge and all of a sudden it collapsing underneath you. It's like some of these people's biggest fear, and I'm like, that'll never happen, and there it goes.
Sure.
As far as who to blame, I don't know if it's when people blame open borders or when people blame infrastructure. I don't know how they're making that connection, if they're doing it sort of to try to suggest that because we're distracted. I don't know. I don't know what I always say context. I know you hate when I say context. I don't know what the context of those comments were, so I can't speak on those specifically. I don't think it's necessarily a border issue on why the bridge collapsed. I don't think and I heard some people making a diversity, equity, and inclusion argument that suggesting somehow maybe the pilot was incompetent. I don't know that any of these things are factors. I think it's a tragedy. I think to exploit a tragedy is a shame. I'm trying. Ronna McDaniel is actually the author of "Never Let a Crisis Go to Waste." So, and we all know who Ronna McDaniel is, right? So, yeah, both parties exploit tragedy for political gains, and this is probably no exception.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen one prominent Democrat or television network that would blame a politician on what took place here. I haven't heard
they
one
blame
Democrat.
Trump. I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I
somebody
haven't
somewhere
seen
is
that.
blaming Trump.
Well,
I haven't seen it either.
maybe some troll on social media, but certainly not somebody that's on television. They're not blaming DEI. Let's talk a little bit about that because you have Charlie Kirk a few weeks ago that makes a statement which I thought is repugnant, disgusting, and he says that when he gets on a plane and he sees a black pilot, he's going to wonder if that black pilot is properly qualified when there's absolutely no evidence that black pilots have to go through any less training than somebody who's white. I just don't understand why Turning Point USA and we have other prominent people on the right that make statements about DEI and particularly his statements about black pilots, which I thought was racist, bigoted in nature, and not true.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to defend his comments. I don't know, again, I don't know what he was saying when he was saying those comments. That being said, we do have to look at the DEI initiatives and see if they're actually helping the targeted population. And this goes back, you can go back to the affirmative action days where, in college admissions, you have to actually ask the class of people that you're trying to protect or whether these things are actually helping them. Because a lot of times there's people who are not part of these groups who want to do good. And it's not malintent. They're like, hey, I want to help these people. And I think this is in their best interest. But in the end of the day, sometimes these things aren't in certain groups' best interest. It's better to go to those communities and ask them how these affect them. And if you were a black pilot who maybe flown in the Air Force, maybe you're the best pilot out there, and now you have people looking over their shoulder going, hey, was this a diversity hire? When you institute programs like this, and not through any fault, again, I think these people have the best intentions. You have to look at the negative effects of it. And if you're a qualified person, and then also, but there is some truth to the concerns of, are you using DEI to overlook or jump over a better qualified person for whatever position? I don't think that advances anybody's interests to make preferences based on race over qualifications. I mean, if there's a lack of opportunity because of a race, if you want to say that there's a class of people that have been discriminated against because of their race, provide opportunities to be trained, fine. But to say, well, this person has different qualifications and one of those qualifying factors is race, I just think that's not consistent with Martin Luther King's dream or any racial advancement.
Okay, so I'm with you there. I'm not a huge fan, believe it or not, of affirmative action, but I will also say if it's somebody that is black versus white who have absolutely similar qualifications, I have no problem with somebody saying, all right, let's go with the minority. I don't have a problem with that per se. But the problem I have, and I think we'll probably agree on this, you have to be a certain type of individual. When you walk on an airplane and you see an employee on the plane that is black, and the first thing that enters your mind is, oh, they're probably not qualified. That's who Charlie Kirk is. And let's be honest, Charlie Kirk is one of the loudest voices within the Republican Party today. He speaks at a lot of Trump events. This is the guy that you want speaking for Republicans. I know every Republican doesn't think that way. I'm sure you don't think that way. You have to be a certain type of person, and I'm going to use the word bigot. I'm going to use the word racist. When a Charlie Kirk says he's worried when he gets on a plane if he has a black pilot, I just think that is so hateful and bigoted in nature. It's one thing to say the types of things that you're saying, but it's another thing for Charlie Kirk to say the things that he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I'm not familiar with the exact quote. I didn't see it in its context, and I can't speak for or against Charlie Kirk. That's his own thing. Have him on and have him explain himself for sure.
I'm sure he wouldn't, but
But
yeah.
there's I'm trying to remember which show it was. I was interviewing somebody, and we had a great conversation about this particular topic. And
Mhm.
I'm going to send it to you when I find it.
Okay,
But
sure.
we were talking about it was with George Santos actually. It was I interviewed George Santos not this time, but the last time. We were having a discussion. There was a black Republican in
Mhm.
Arizona. It was during the Turning Point event. I forget what they call it in Arizona. It's called
Mhm.
something, but Amfest. So there was a bar, and there was some Nick Fuentes people there, and they started chanting racist things at this guy. Do you remember this? I don't know
I
if you
do.
saw it on the
I think
And
I
then
did. Yep.
there was some people like kind of booing, but whatever. But he kind of tried to take it in stride. But the long and short of it was George Santos went on a tear for about 15 minutes. I'll send you the clip talking about racism in the Republican Party and what we need to do about it. I even went in to a tear about how you can't call yourself, when people on the right complain that, you stand up for people and they criticize the left for not doing that. You don't stand in a room and let somebody get attacked like that and not get their defense. So I spoke up about that too. Look, I don't know what the context of Charlie Kirk or what he was trying to suggest, or if he was trying to make an illustration for whatever reason to prove a point. Maybe it didn't land right. I don't know. But the reality is we do need to figure out exactly, and I know we're getting way off into a tangent with DEI, but we do need to start figuring out what it is that these groups need, listen to the communities and start providing those things. If you listen to people like Mark Clark, who's leading a Republican revolution in Chicago to try to flip it from blue to red, because Black people in those communities are watching what's happening at the border, and they're feeling very ignored by the Democrat Party. I mean, that's what the community is asking for, not this other stuff.
So let's talk a little bit about, Christians and people of the Jewish faith, because obviously you're a Republican, right?
Yeah, sure.
And you guys have lost. I say you guys because you're a Republican. You vote Republican. You guys have lost 6 of the last 7 popular vote. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But you have Donald Trump last week, who makes disgusting comments about people of the Jewish faith. By the way, 70% of Jews vote Democrat. They're Democrats. And Donald Trump basically said that if you vote Democrat, not only do you hate your own religion, but you must hate Israel as well. Ridiculous statement. And then Charlie Kirk, a few days ago, says that if you vote Democrat, you're not a true Christian. Now, obviously, in my opinion anyway, I'll get your thoughts on this. Both of those comments are blatantly ignorant and disgusting and ridiculous. You think that's a good game plan for Donald Trump and Charlie Kirk to be basically saying you're not Jewish if you don't vote Republican, you're not a true Christian if you don't vote Republican? Because I find it absurd.
Was that like Donald Trump saying you're not Black if you don't vote for me?
Yeah. So here's the difference. No, well, let's talk about that. Joe Biden apologized. He said he was wrong. He said he got caught in the moment. He was on a morning show with the Black Coast, and he did something that Donald Trump and Charlie Kirk would never do. That's to admit you were wrong and say you were sorry. And Republicans don't seem to have this problem. Democrats don't, because in the last presidential election, last few, Republicans are getting under 15% of the Black vote. But again, Joe Biden was wrong in making that statement, but he apologized, and he knew he was wrong. Donald Trump hasn't apologized to every Jew in this country. Charlie Kirk hasn't apologized to every Christian in this country. That's the big fundamental difference, in my opinion.
Well, look, and there, and being Jewish and having relatives that are Jewish and some relatives that are liberal and Jewish, it's weird right now because a lot of Jews, as in a lot of Blacks, feel very abandoned by the Democratic Party, especially after the terror attack in Israel, especially after the calls for ceasefire, especially after people like Rashida Tlaib and the comments that she made that were pro-Hamas. So this is one of those weird intersections between left policies of two-state solutions in Israel, leftist type policies that have been more pro-Palestine than pro-Israel. And this kind of put it in the forefront because it hit a lot of people in a personal way. And so there are a lot of Jews now looking at the Democratic Party and feeling like they don't support Israel. Now, there's a lot of Jews who don't support Israel, and that's the interesting part, because religion and politics are kind of the same thing. And when you have Jewish people in the United States that are never been to Israel or not really attached to Israel, and they're more attached to the Democratic Party than they are Israel, it's easier for them to take a position against Israel. But make no mistake, the anti-Semitism in this country has been reignited by our political differences. Yeah. And I think that's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I would say that, Tlaib is certainly one of them. There are certainly a select handful, maybe, of Democrats that are not pro-Israel, or certainly not as pro-Israel as I would like them to be. I think it's very fair to criticize Benjamin Netanyahu, which I am not a fan of. With that being said, the overwhelming majority of Democrats are pro-Israel. They see Israel as our allies. Even Chuck Schumer's comments, he was criticized. But at the same time, Schumer has always said that Israel has the right to defend themselves. There has been some criticism with Benjamin Netanyahu, but the overwhelming majority of Democrats, certainly, at least in my eyes, are pro-Israel. But would I like to hear some louder voices in contrast to the Tlaibs of the world and the Bushes of the world? Absolutely. But I just think there's, again, a fine line between what you're saying, which you make some valid points, and what a Charlie Kirk or a Donald Trump is saying. I mean, what a stretch. Again, 70% of Jewish people in this country vote Democrat. Donald Trump is saying that 70% of Jews hate their religion and are anti-Israel. How can you even, first of all, it's not true, but how could you even make a statement like that that's so ignorant?
Well, look, I don't, like I said, I don't have the context of the full quote. If I had it, I would look at it and I would give you an analysis, but I can't comment on something I can't see. I don't know what the context was. So
well, I mean, all I can tell you is that Donald Trump was talking about Jewish people, and he basically said verbatim, you hate your religion if you vote Democrat. Quote, that's what he said. There's really no other context to it. He was
like
talking
I said,
about
I don't want
Jewish
to comment on something I'm not familiar with just
All
because,
right. All right.
this is forever. What comes out of my mouth is forever.
No, I understand, but I think that statement in general, I think we would agree, it doesn't matter who says it. It's ridiculous. Anybody, Republican, Democrat, anybody, when you take 70% of a religion and say you hate your religion if you don't basically vote for me, that's absurd. And it's not going to help the Republican
Politicians
Party.
say absurd things, and whether or not they apologize for it, politicians say absurd things. And we've already talked about Joe Biden having a history of saying absurd things, whether or not he apologized for them. So I don't know.
You think that's a fair? Well, let's talk about that. You think, because I know obviously you're a Republican, you're going to be voting for Donald Trump. You don't like Democrats. You don't like Joe Biden. I get all that.
No, wait, let's be clear. I don't dislike Democrats, actually. I don't. I respect anybody who disagrees with me because I feel like we have different policies.
Right.
And I think that's, and I'm sorry to be a tangential, but it's an important point because you were actually making it before I came on.
Fair enough.
We can have different political policies. We can have different stances on abortion. We can have different stances on gun control or on the border, on Israel, whatever. We can disagree on policies. And the place to fix that is at the ballot box and in Washington or even in our communities, whether it be through local government or state government. I don't hate anybody who I disagree with or dislike somebody I disagree with.
I didn't.
I look at it as an opportunity to actually learn and collaborate and move this country forward together and not always be like, you get what you want and we get what we want. I think that's the problem.
Right. I certainly would not characterize you as a person who hates.
Sure. No, I know. Just being clear.
Right. No, understood. Point taken. Understood.
For your audience who goes, this guy's nuts. I want them to know I'm not nuts always.
I don't think you're nuts. I've never made that statement, but
I know.
This is the question that I do ask Republicans and Donald Trump supporters, and maybe I can learn from you because I just don't understand.
Sure.
And again, I understand the point that you're a Republican and you don't hate Democrats, but you dislike the Biden administration. You dislike some of their policies.
I dislike the policies, correct.
Right. Understood. But my question is, how do you wake up in the morning and say to yourself, you know what? I dislike Democrats' policy so much that I'm going to vote for a man who is a liable sexual abuser. I'm going to vote for a man who's attacked women on looks, who's attacked POWs, who's virtually attacked every single person that disagrees with him, who's facing 91 felony counts. That's the part that I just can't grasp and understand.
I mean, I'll make it easy for you. None of those things that Donald Trump has been accused of doing has affected my life personally. Now,
so then why do so many Republicans go after transgenders and go after drag queens? They're not affecting their lives either.
I'm just you asked me for my opinion on how I wake up, and I'm telling you,
Sure.
None of those things Donald Trump has been accused of has affected my life personally. The things that have affected my life personally is how much I have to spend on groceries and how much my utility bill has gone up, how much I have to spend to put gas in my car. Those things affect me and my family. Our money isn't going as far. Inflation is out of control. I mean, you can blame Trump. I'm not saying who's responsible for those policies, but what I'm telling you is the Democrat in charge of the government right now and the Democrats in control of the Senate have not done anything to improve these situations in my life.
Did COVID affect your family and your life in any way?
It affected everybody in the entire world. Absolutely.
So Donald Trump was president of the United States at that time. Did you put any blame on him?
He didn't cause COVID, first of all.
Didn't say he did.
I
Didn't
know,
say caused it, but
what actually, I think Donald Trump's COVID policies were very successful. I think Trump's COVID policies were actually carried forward under the Biden administration. He was responsible for Operation Warp Speed, which
then why did he keep it quiet?
Faster.
Then why do so many Republicans call the vaccine poison? And why did Donald Trump take the vaccine in private with his wife?
Yeah, well, that has become a great debate, and it actually hurt him in the 2020 election. A lot of the vaccine suspicion because he was out promoting the vaccine, and he did it. He got booed for it, for promoting the vaccine, telling people.
You think Donald Trump did a good job handling of COVID? Do you really believe that?
Yeah, I think considering the circumstances, think back. I mean, you have to think back to 2020 and 2019.
I would love to think back when he said 15 cases down to 0, when it's going to be gone by Easter, when he talked about injecting yourself with disinfectant, when he took coronavirus.
Well, no, that was fake news. You know that he didn't say put bleach in your arm. He asked his experts if there was a way you can have disinfect your blood.
What a ridiculous thing to say in a
let's go over this. So 2019, COVID comes across. We start learning about it probably around January of 2019.
Yep.
They tried to minimize the impact of it. They tried to minimize China's exposure. Trump immediately shuts down essentially precludes people from China coming to the country. And Nancy Pelosi
would do, which anybody would do.
Pelosi said he was, what do they call him? What do you call it when you don't want somebody from a country? There's a word for it. No, it wasn't Muslims then. It was people from China. But either way, Nancy, he got criticized from saying people from China can't come to the United States. Then he goes forward. He goes and uses the Defense Production Act, gets car companies essentially to start producing ventilators. We produced so many ventilators that we were able to export ventilators,
which so many people on the right said killed so many people.
It did because we could do 2 shows on it. The issue was COVID. We didn't know what the hell was going on. So we did everything we could to try to keep up with what the experts were telling us as a government. When I say us, the government was like, okay, they're telling us ventilators save lives. We found out later ventilators were killing people. They said this vaccine is what we need to treat the virus. We find out later that the vaccine is killing people. So when you act on information, I'm not saying I'm not going to go down that vaccine road because YouTube will flag the content and then it'll be banned. But I'm saying people have concerns later after they're starting to see research that was held from them during the crisis.
So do you think Donald Trump maybe should have had some concerns when we were losing 3,000 to 5,000 people a day in this country and he was holding rallies with Herman Cain and others who passed away? Don't you think they should have been concerned? Instead, they made people sign waivers saying, hey, if anything happens to you, you can't sue us. I just don't think that's very responsible to be.
You got to look at when that was, though. Remember, people started getting COVID fatigue around then. There was a period of time where Trump and his team recommended the 14 days to slow the spread. I mean, this was a big beef that DeSantis tried to make in his primary run when he was saying, "Oh, Donald Trump shut down the country and it was up to the states to do it." But that's neither here nor there. Donald Trump relied on Fauci and his other experts, relied on their advice. Recommended the 14 days to slow the spread. They recommended the social distancing. Do you remember they had a press conference telling people what the numbers were, what they must do. Yeah. There's a lot of politics that got mixed into COVID, but I think the COVID response was as you would expect from somebody who is trying to actually save lives.
I would just respectfully disagree with you. As one of the richest countries in the world per capita, we had more deaths than almost any other country in the world. Now COVID, listen, I'm not blaming Donald Trump for COVID, but I am blaming Donald Trump for the response. But I would agree with you. Donald Trump didn't cause COVID. I've never said that he did. But you want to blame Joe Biden for inflation and groceries and all that when inflation and gas prices were up virtually across the world. Inflation was at double digits, and now it's down to like 3%. Don't you want to give Joe Biden some credit?
Well, hang on. Now, there's a difference between inflation slowing and prices going down. And this is the thing. Prices are still elevated. Just because the rate of the increase of those prices has slowed, it doesn't mean it's still not expensive. And wages have not met where inflation was. So we have a real crisis right now in this country that people are going to start to learn about soon because we have trillions of dollars of consumer credit that's going to become under default soon. And a lot of people are relying on the equity in their homes. Home prices have just dropped 20%, fastest rate since 2008. We're facing an impending economic collapse. And it's because we haven't even fully felt the impacts of inflation yet.
Okay.
So things
Well,
are not rosy out there for anybody.
I mean, if we're going to talk about debt, Donald Trump put us in twice as much debt as Joe Biden and Barack Obama.
And
I would say that.
Republicans just gave you even more debt on the other day on their stupid omnibus bill. I'm not going to
Well,
argue with
I'm
that.
just telling you, Republicans spend much more money than Democrats. Nikki Haley on a debate stage set that out. And I would also say that, when it comes to inflation, gas prices, and the economy, we have the lowest unemployment rate we've had in almost 50 years. And if the excuse, which I hear from Republicans, is, oh, those are COVID jobs, not true, because the unemployment rate is lower now than it was before COVID. Fast job growth, the NASDAQ is way up, manufacturing jobs are way up, inflation way down. The economy is doing just fine. So I don't hear from a lot of economists about the concerns about a collapse that I'm hearing from you.
The economy is not doing just fine. I mean, look, your listeners.
What metrics? Where are you reading that from?
The life, everybody who is listening to your show right now, ask them. I'm curious to know.
People are uneducated, and a lot of people that say the sky is falling are the people that watch Newsmax and OAN. What I care about is actual stats.
What I'm saying is the people listening to your show right now or watching online, they are feeling the strain in the economy. Whether economists tell them the economy's good or not, they feel the strain in the economy. People's lives are. This is the number one issue, by the way, on polling.
Yeah,
this isn't just me saying this.
I agree. But David, there's a difference between talking to some people or what people say on social media about feeling a certain way, and then actual stats and numbers about jobs, the economy, and wage.
But what are stats? It's a way people use math to lie to people.
The unemployment numbers, they're not.
Forget the unemployment. What does it matter if unemployment's low, but people are still struggling to pay their bills? I just don't understand how you can use the metrics to
So you don't think job growth and wages, job growth and wages up?
Doesn't matter.
You don't think inflation going down? You don't think those stats matter at all? It's just how people feel.
No, it's how people are experiencing this economy. If the economy was so great, right? Why are people going deeper into credit card debt? Why are interest rates so high that people can't afford to buy homes? People are still spending a lot of money on groceries. And when they fill up their car, people have to make decisions whether they're going to buy food for their family or even go on a vacation. And I know that sounds bougie, but if the economy was so strong, people would be traveling all over the place. The economy isn't strong.
But I guess this is, the countries that we compare ourselves to, G7 summit, the countries that we compare ourselves to, we are doing much better when it comes to inflation and barometrics of the economy than many of the countries that we compare ourselves to.
But I want Americans to compare their lives to the way they are right now after 3 years of Joe Biden being president to the way their lives were when Donald Trump was president.
So you think that the economy where it was when Donald Trump left it and where the country was where Donald Trump left it, we were better then than we are now?
Yes, absolutely. Gas was lower. Groceries were cheaper. Supply chains were full. Your grocery shelves were full. People were spending money at a rate so rapidly that the Fed actually had to raise interest rates to get people to stop spending money. They have been trying desperately to kill this economy in order to slow inflation. That's a good economy. It's just the way they're running the government isn't good for people. And this is the thing. I hear this with Republicans too, by the way, when I argue about dysfunction in the House of Representatives and I say Republicans control the House, they need to do more to close the border, for example. What Republicans will say is, well, we only control this and this. And actually, it's not that bad. When Republicans start to try to explain away what we, the people, feel are their failures, we feel exactly the same. We're like, well, we live in this world that you're trying to say that doesn't exist, and we disagree with you. And I say the same thing about people in this economy. I would challenge you to talk to your listeners who are not Republicans, probably. Ask them if they feel like this economy is good.
I have a lot of.
Ask them if they feel it's good or not.
Yeah, I mean, I have obviously when I open up the phone lines, I have a mixture of Republicans and Democrats, which is, by the way, what I like. What I can tell you is if somebody, is not doing well financially, I try to ask them, okay, well, what Joe Biden policy, forced that to happen? What I like to do is I like to look at the actual numbers. Here's why I say this, David, because almost 70% of Republicans still feel like, or at least believe, that Trump won the 2020 election. Now, I'm going to do something that I don't normally do. And I hate to compare myself to Charlie Kirk or Donald Trump, but in this aspect, I'm going to generalize. If 70% of the country that are Republican think that Trump won, then 70% of Republicans are morons because Trump did not win in 2020. Now, I'm sure those 70% who either are extremely ignorant or just are lying or believe everything Trump says will probably say that they're struggling and they're not able to pay their bills and it's all Joe Biden's fault. I go by the numbers. I don't go by what somebody's feelings are. I get what you're saying. There are people in this country that are always struggling, homeless, out of control, right? There are people struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. What have Democrats been trying to do, which Republicans vote against? Number one, health care for all. Number two, raising the minimum wage. Number three, maternity leave. Government programs that will help people who are struggling get by. Republicans are always the party. They call themselves pro-life, which I don't like that term. But then when that baby is born, let's get rid of every government program paid for by taxes that would help that individual. That's my problem with Republicans, so many of them that want to blame everything on Joe Biden, yet they want to give tax breaks to the top 1%, which is, by the way, what Donald Trump did. The biggest tax breaks to the richest people in the history of this country. That doesn't help middle America. And that's my issue with Republicans that want to blame the economy or any issues they personally have or their feelings on Joe Biden.
Well, let's look at that real quick. And when you when you give people at the highest 1% a tax break, I know a lot of people like to say, like, oh, you're giving the richest people a tax break. The richest 1% of this country are your job creators. Those are your people that are creating the opportunities. And you talk about a minimum wage, right? If you look at California right now, there's a story I just saw today that the fast food industry in California is laying people off because they cannot afford the wages. When a state mandates a wage rather than letting the market determine the wage, you can put people at you can actually cause a job loss because people who want those jobs, they can't even get them because the companies
small
can't
businesses.
afford.
Not for businesses like Walmart that are paying them
that's not true.
$8 an hour.
Regardless of how big the company is, they still look at their numbers and they make a decision on where they're going to open a business. And if it's a state where the minimum wage is higher than a state where it's a lower minimum wage, they look at whether the cost of doing business is worth doing business in the state.
I hear what
you're saying. That takes jobs from people.
I understand what you're saying, but from a pragmatic standpoint, I agree with Joe Biden and Democrats when they say a CEO of a Fortune 500 company should not be paying a lower percentage on taxes than a household income of $50,000 or under.
That percentage argument, that's a fake argument. I'm going to tell you why. 1% or even 5% of $100,000 is much more than 5% of $10,000.
Right,
so
but David, I'm talking about strictly the percentage, not the amount of money.
But that's my point. The percentage is an amount of money. When you want somebody who makes $1 million to pay 25% taxes, and by the way, we have a graduated income tax. People on the lower income scale, they pay less taxes by a percentage than people who make more money. The scale goes up. You pay more money the more you make.
I understand, David, but here's why I disagree with you. The bottom line here is if you're making $25,000 a year, you shouldn't be paying a higher percentage on your taxes than somebody that's making over $1 million a year. Now, that's my personal opinion, and I know a lot of Republicans, disagree with me on that. But when you look at the history of this country, even what's happening right now, all the government programs paid for by our taxes that are helping people that are poor, Republicans vote against those programs time and time again, and Democrats are the ones that vote for those programs. It could be extending unemployment benefits. It could be, maternity leave, like I said, or welfare or food stamps. Republicans don't want to help poor people, and Democrats, at least policy-wise, want to get them on their feet again. Yeah, we all want people working. We don't want the entire country on welfare. We don't want the entire country on food stamps. I get all that, but the bottom line is that, at least in my opinion, I think this is where we'll disagree.
Yeah.
Inflation and, your groceries and all that stuff wasn't caused by Joe Biden. We are coming out of a pandemic, which and the war in the Ukraine didn't help with gas prices either. The bottom line is in the last 3 years, they have plummeted down. Now, if you don't want to give Joe Biden credit for that, fine. But I don't think you can do both and blame Joe Biden for inflation and high gas prices and then don't give him any credit for the prices that have plummeted.
What prices have plummeted?
Gas prices are not the same they were several years ago. Inflation is down 3%.
I just paid in Florida. I just paid $3.80 a gallon when Donald Trump was president. That was $1.90.
Because we were coming out of a pandemic.
But they haven't gone down. Yes, they're not as high as they were when Joe Biden first took it, but they're not as low as they could be. Joe Biden, the first thing he did when he took office. The first thing Joe Biden did when we were coming out of the pandemic, when he came into office, the first thing he did was stop domestic oil production. And they didn't stop it. He reduced domestic oil production, stopped issuing permits for new oil expedition. And as a matter of fact, he made Russia even more powerful by encouraging through our policies for Europeans to buy gas and oil from Russia.
Okay, so question, if that's the case, then why did oil refineries and oil companies in this country have record profits more than the last 25 years? You don't think that has anything to do with
oil production? They have record oil production because this is a sign of
David.
No, man, this is a sign of a failing economy. Now, put the profits aside for a second. This is what I'm telling you, is that people are spending less money, which is why inflation is going down, because they don't have as much money as they had before. People are starting to make decisions. Look at the restaurant industry. It's your key indicator of where an economy is going. Restaurants are getting slower in everybody's community. They're half empty on most nights of the week except for weekends. People stop spending discretionarily when they start feeling it. And now look, well, maybe not in Vegas, but the thing is, you have to look, and you talk about perception, and maybe the math is wrong, and I want to get back to a point you just made, but perception is what people get elected on. And that's the reality. They say politics is perception. And regardless of what the numbers is going into 2024, people are concerned about this economy, whether it's real or fake.
People should always be concerned about the economy, but
and they're going to vote that way.
Well, people should always be concerned about the economy, but what's the perception of Donald Trump? He's a great leader.
They perceive him as being a stronger. Polling suggests that people had more confidence in his approach. This is polling, not David Pollock. Polling suggests that people have more confidence in Donald Trump than they do Joe Biden with respect to the economy. Now, whether that's real or fake, I'll send you the polls. I'm not.
I would love to talk to some people that feel that way, and I certainly have a lot of questions to ask them. Well, we'll obviously agree to disagree on responsibility and where the economy is at now. I just like to look at the numbers and see where we're at now.
I love this conversation, by the way. This is my favorite time of being on. I'm having a blast.
Well, I am too, David. I always appreciate our talk. A couple more minutes here with you.
Sure.
We can talk about the economy, and we can disagree on why and where we're at now. And I just like to look at the numbers, and people can feel the way they feel. I just don't trust people. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
That is what we say Democrats don't do. We say Democrats don't trust their voters because they think and I don't want to, and again, this is going to sound disparaging, but the right will say that Democrats don't trust their voters because they think they know what's better for them. This is always the big argument for why Democrats want bigger government versus Republicans.
Well, I think I know what's better.
Knows what's better for people than what people know is better for themselves.
I think I know what's better for the country. And again, you'll probably disagree with me on this, but you have a former president who's had 26 women who have accused him of rape or sexual assault, including his ex-wife in a deposition. He's a liable sexual abuser. You have a former president who's facing 91 felony counts. And regardless of how people feel about it, or if they want to call it a two-tier justice system, which, by the way, I disagree with, it's not. He's still facing 91 felony counts, one of whom, Jack Smith, who's a known Republican, who's prosecuted Democrats as well. You have a president, a former president, who, in my opinion, is an embarrassment. The things he says on a regular basis, whether it be about people of the Jewish faith, about women, you name it. Now, some people will say, well, I'll deal with the bad tweets. Look at what a wonderful president he was. I disagree with that statement as well. We haven't had an insurrection in this country under Joe Biden either. And Donald Trump has said himself that he will get those people out of jail. Some of those people he will pardon who attacked and physically assaulted police officers. What would Republicans say if Joe Biden today said, boy, some of those people who attacked police officers during Black Lives Matter protests, yeah, we have video of it, but you know what? I'm going to pardon all those people. David, it's insane. He's insane.
I think Republicans would say starting with prosecuting those people who murdered people during the BLM riots would be a good start. I mean, the way they've targeted
no person
people
who's murdered anybody in a Black Lives Matter protest that has been released.
The officer in St. Louis who was shot and killed when he went to go help it, that guy wasn't murdered during a BLM protest?
I said, yeah, he was, but we're talking about releasing those people? That hasn't happened.
No, nobody was even arrested. I mean, that's the thing. Right. There was people who were literally just burning businesses to the ground and shooting people, beating people to death in some instances. And they didn't do anything to those people. But the FBI can go and find a mother in some place because she was at the Capitol on January 6th. If they would have put the same effort into finding the criminals who are murdering people and burning down Black communities, as if they would have taken 5% of the effort that the Justice Department is doing in identifying January 6 people to catch some of the murderers in Chicago that are killing people at a higher rate than some war zones across the world. If we would take any of these resources and go after the people that are actually hurting people in this country rather than people who protested at the Capitol on January 6th, I think that's a problem.
Okay, so I would disagree with your characterization because I don't think it's factually accurate that when you claim that all the any of the violence that took place during Black Lives Matter protests that they, quote, didn't do anything. Thousands of people were arrested, so that's factually
Yeah,
inaccurate.
but what were
Number
they
two,
charged with? Were they charged with terrorism?
all sorts of different
Well,
charges.
they weren't charged with
burn
terrorism.
if you burn a building on fire, you'll have to look at the cases. What I can tell you
Yeah.
is you said they didn't do anything, and that's not true. Number two,
Okay.
there's a fine line between somebody, by the way, it's tragic, who was murdered, and they couldn't find the suspects, to they weren't trying or they weren't
Why
looking.
can't they find the suspects?
Sometimes when horrible crimes are committed, they can't, like, for example, the bomber on January 6th, they haven't found that suspect either. There are all sorts of different reasons. So to characterize this, they're Democrats or it was Black Lives Matter, they're not doing anything. I'm sorry, I completely disagree with you on that. Number three, you talk about January 6th. I'm not talking about somebody, a mother who, by the way, I interviewed, who went to jail for several months. I had her on the show, and she's blaming Donald Trump now, and she's anti-Trump. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about people who beat police officers with their own batons, people who destruction of property, but people who actually beat police officers that day. And Donald Trump is saying he will pardon all those people. You're telling me you don't have a problem with that?
He's been clear on the type of pardons he would offer, and it's always been surrounding nonviolent people on January 6th. There was a lot of people who got swept up, and I know them. I know people who've gotten swept up, and the way they've manipulated the evidence, the way they've used. I mean, I'm telling you, I talked to people who were there, and I've seen the way
they all had their day in court. They all had their day in court.
No, man, they didn't have a day in court, and anybody who has been involved. Anybody who's been involved in the criminal justice system in one way or the other knows how. Look, I'm a lawyer. I've seen it on both sides of the criminal defense.
How can you say they didn't have a day in court? Every one of those defendants had their day in court.
Because when you're charged with felonies, significant crimes like terrorism, when you're facing life in prison or very substantial sentences, and somebody offers you a plea bargain and says, hey, you can have a trial in a D.C. court. And by the way, nobody's ever won in a D.C. court when they've taken one of these cases to trial. Or you can plead to this offense that says what you did on January 6th, and yes, you did that bad thing, and you're sorry, and we'll put you in jail for a year, and then you'll go about your life. There's a different, and this happens, by the way, not just in January 6th. We can talk about criminal justice reform another day. People are frequently overcharged in order to get them a conviction. Prosecutors run on their conviction rates, and this is a problem in their criminal justice. And by the way, which is why Donald Trump became a hero in the black community in Atlanta when they took him in jail and they booked him in the mugshot. There was black communities that were holding signs and cheering for him because now it was the abuse in our criminal justice system. It was happening in a way where people were finally shedding light to it.
I'm not black, as you can see.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you something. I know a lot of people who are black who were disgusted by Donald Trump trying to compare himself to black people. Donald Trump has had a silver spoon in his mouth since he was born. He was given $500 million from his father, and he's been a privileged man for his entire life. And for him in any way, shape, or form to compare himself to a minority in this country is disgusting. And could you find maybe a handful of black people that somehow are cheering Donald Trump? I suppose. But you will see at the polls in November that the overwhelming majority of people who are black in this country will not be voting for Donald Trump. And that statement that he made was absurd, disgusting, and ridiculous. Donald Trump doesn't know what it's like to be followed in an electronics store because of the color of his skin. Orange people don't get followed. Orange people don't get pulled over because they're orange. Okay. I mean, listen, my advice is don't defy a subpoena for a year. Don't break the law. Don't think you're above the law. He wants immunity. Are you effing kidding me? He wants immunity. So just fair game. Do whatever the hell you want. Listen, I don't know how you feel about this, David, but I think he's going to be embarrassed in a courtroom. Melania is going to be embarrassed. I do believe he broke campaign finance violations. I do believe that was election interference. And we'll have to see how the case goes with Bragg, but he's got far more issues than just Stormy Daniels embarrassing him in a courtroom.
Listen, I honestly think Bragg is going to be embarrassed. That case was the weakest case. I'm glad we got around to this because I knew we were trying to. I don't know how much time is left, so I'll be brief.
Yep, go ahead. Yep.
If you remember, Democrats were upset when Alvin Bragg brought that case because that was perceived to be the weakest of the other cases because they knew that Georgia case was coming and they knew those federal indictments were coming. So they wanted Bragg not to because they wanted the big case to be one of the other ones. Right. And now here we are with an April 15th trial date on the weakest case. And there's something to be said about that. These other cases are being delayed until after the election now because of all of the challenges, constitutional challenges, and rightfully so. This stuff, you don't want to be hasteful about charging a former president of the United States. We're creating law that's going to be applied for generations. So you do have to be diligent about how we're applying laws. And these immunity claims are worth vetting in the Supreme Court if necessary.
Well, I don't want to give anybody immunity. I don't care.
Well,
I mean,
the Constitution does. So we have to evaluate whether his claims of immunity are protected under the Constitution or not. It's what our Supreme Court is there to decide.
It's already kind of been ruled on when his attorney said, hey, he should be, if he threatened somebody or threatened to kill somebody, he's got immunity if it was a political rival. I mean, just an absurd argument. I will say this, of the 4 cases, I would say this case is probably the weakest. I'm not saying it's a weak case. What I am saying is that of the 4 cases, it's probably the weakest. You have Michael Cohen that is going to testify. As you know, he went to jail because of, working for Trump.
He was dishonest. No, he went to jail because he was dishonest.
Well,
and that's their star witness,
going
a guy
to jail,
who has no credibility.
Well, if going to jail was just being dishonest, then Donald Trump would get probably 1,000 life sentences. So we know that there's a little bit more to it than that. But Michael Cohen is going to be testifying. Yeah. Stormy Daniels is going to be testifying. Why do all these people around Donald Trump either go to jail or file for bankruptcy? Rudy Giuliani is a disgrace. Why is it that so many people around Donald Trump, even his former vice president, is not endorsing Donald Trump? Why do so many people around him get in so much trouble? Can we just admit that maybe Donald Trump's not such a good guy? Maybe if you want to talk about credibility, he doesn't have much credibility. And if you work for Donald Trump, you're probably going to get in some trouble if you're around him long enough.
I mean, look, we're comparing. Now, I'll separate Pence for a second from this.
Sure.
If the weakest case against Donald Trump is hinging on the 2 star witnesses of one guy who went to jail for lying and another woman who lost a defamation suit against Donald Trump and who was a former porn star and turned stripper to profit off her. If these are your star witnesses in the weakest case against Donald Trump, by the way, on charges that are only felonies based on a federal crime that doesn't exist. And legal experts have picked this case apart. This is a terrible case to bring, and all it's going to do is motivate people even more to support Donald Trump. But let's go to, and we can talk about Pence for 1 second. Now you're crossing into the political issues. The reason why Pence won't support Trump is because the political GOP establishment hates Donald Trump, and you're seeing this with the GOP resignations. They'd rather lose the House than be there to have to vote for Trump if we don't get 270.
It might have something to do with, chance of hang Mike Pence when Donald Trump was smiling and said that he deserved it. It might have a little bit of something to do with that, or asking Mike Pence to do what he couldn't do, which was overturn the outcome of a free and fair election. I'm not a Mike Pence defender. I never have been a Mike Pence defender. Right. I think he's two-faced, and I think he's just a blowhard. I think his political career is over. But with that being said, I think we both can agree the country does not want to see Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. I know there are MAGAs out there that, will listen to every word Donald Trump says and they think he's the next Messiah. But most of the country, including myself, by the way, I don't want to see Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. I want to see younger people in office. I just think that it's a big distraction from the real issues facing this country. And I think there are better people that Republicans could have. I want to ask you this before we go, Ronna McDaniel, because I'm going to be talking about it next.
I love this.
Yes. So we have a couple more minutes here, 5 minutes. I want to ask you about Ronna McDaniel because I'm going to be doing the segment next. So Ronna McDaniel's hired. She actually changed her name and switched the Romney name because Trump wanted her to do so. You want to talk about no credibility. She goes on the networks, I believe MSNBC yesterday, and she basically says to the person that is interviewing her, I didn't want to admit Donald Trump lost because, I was the RNC chair and now I'm just my own person, which lacks any credibility. Everybody at MSNBC has been destroying her, Scarborough, everybody. It appears now is that they're caving and she is going to be let go. What are your thoughts on this story?
She was fired. I was breaking it to DCPatriot.com. We have the story right up there. They dropped her because listen, you have to feel bad for this woman. Not only was she fired from her job at the RNC, and I don't feel bad for her, by the way.
I don't.
She's fired for her job at the RNC. Then she goes to MSNBC, of all places, right? And she gets fired from there. So this woman's hated by Democrats, hated by Republicans. You really have to be bad at your job to be hated by everybody and not even be able to profit off of the people you tried to screw.
But this is the Republican. She was the Republican chair. What does that say about your party?
We're going to agree all day on this one.
Laura Trump? You want Laura?
I like Laura Trump. I like Laura.
Really?
I like saying her name because I live in Florida. And all the Northerners come here and they call it Florida. And I can't say Laura Trump without sounding like Lara Trump. I can't, because it's Lara, so I can't say Laura. So anyway, but but now listen, I think the Republican Party is Trump's party now. He's the presumptive nominee, and when he becomes the nominee, the way it works in Democratic Party as well, whoever the presidential nominee is, they mirror the party in the image of whoever's at the top of the ticket. In this case, it's Donald Trump.
You really think the Democrat Party does this? It's not a cult. Come on, let's be honest.
Clinton, and I think the Clintons are probably still more in control of the DNC than Biden is. That's for sure.
But they're not in office. But Joe Biden is the president of the United States. Do you disagree with me? I think it's sort of a cult. You don't see Joe Biden selling sneakers. I don't see malarkey signs on the back of pickup trucks. There are people, in my opinion, on the right who are cultists to Donald Trump. I don't see the Democrat Party shaping everything, a certain way because of Joe Biden. I certainly see so many in the Republican Party that are selling their souls. You got Nancy Mace, who sadly was the victim of a sexual assault when she was 16, and now she wants to attack George Stephanopoulos because he asked her what I think is a very valid question. You were the victim of a rape. Why would you support a liable rapist? I think that's a very fair question. And then she starts attacking him.
Well, I want to go back to your previous point because it was so good. Sure. Yes, Donald Trump, there is a cult following around Donald Trump, but not one around Joe Biden. This is a problem for Joe Biden going into 2024, by the way.
That's a good thing.
Is if you want, it is if you're a candidate for president. The other thing is Democrats have their own cult. You guys have your own cults. It's just not Donald Trump or Joe Biden. But there's issues that a lot of people, you take Ukraine. You could take, I'm going to leave the Israel thing alone for a second.
You think it's a cult? Ukraine?
Yes, there are people who, as soon as they were told, and as a matter of fact, there was a report out today by Gallup, and I put it up on my social media. If you look at the Democrat versus Republicans, the majority of Republicans believe that China is the greatest threat to the U.S., and almost the majority of Democrats think that Russia is the greatest threat to U.S.
I think they're both threats. Why can't they both?
No, the greatest threat. But what I'm telling you is more Democrats will put the little flags on their profiles for Ukraine. It's become it has become more of a left issue than it is a Ukraine issue, and it's just that's the way it works.
So many people and by the way, I don't disagree with people on the right putting up Israel flags, supporting our ally Israel as well. I think they're both hand in hand. We can not attack, but we can criticize a government, but still support our allies. And I don't think that makes Democrats no more than it would make a Republican a cultist if they have an Israeli flag. The point I'm trying to make is there are people that are buying the sneakers. There are people that are looking up to Donald Trump as, like I said, the next Messiah, Orange Man. It is a cult. And when I think of people that vote for Joe Biden, they agree with his policies. Yes, there are. I'm not saying everybody that supports Trump is a cultist, but you have to admit a lot of them are. Did you see what Marjorie Taylor Greene was wearing at the State of the Union address? She's a nut job, and we need less nuts.
Well, hold on. How many of the Democrat women were wearing white? For what was it? For women's suffrage or something still? What were they wearing white for? I forget what it was. Like women don't have the right to vote.
Here's the difference. And I'm glad you brought this up. The women, and it wasn't every Democrat, but there were a lot of women on the left that were wearing white for pro-choice. People that are pro-choice that don't want Republicans to try to But
they were wearing the costume too, and that's my point. They had their costume. Marjorie Taylor Greene had hers.
I disagree with you, and here's why. That woman, Riley, who tragically was murdered by an undocumented immigrant. Her own father did an interview recently and said that he was disgusted that his daughter who was murdered was being used for political purposes. I didn't hear any prominent person.
Wait, but her entire family, including her mother, gladly shook Donald Trump's hand. And
yes, you can shake there's plenty of people that shake the president's hand.
I don't know what her father said or what the politics were involved in that. Laken Riley was killed by an illegal alien who shouldn't have been in this country, who was on the radar in New York. He actually fled New York while the police were looking for him. Finds himself in Georgia where he murders a girl who did nothing.
I wish he was never here.
Of an open border.
Okay, I agree. It's not open, but I agree. He should have never been here.
People in that shouldn't be here.
I did a story last month about a woman who was killed, sadly, in a similar fashion by an undocumented immigrant under the Trump administration. But we didn't hear any Republicans mentioning her name. We didn't see Marjorie Taylor Greene marching in during the State of the Union address saying, say her name, a lovely young woman in her early 20s who was murdered by somebody undocumented. Why is it that it's say her name when it's a Democrat president, but when it's a Republican president, we don't even talk about it on the news? It's scoring political points. They're both tragedies. I didn't see a Democrat walking in there wearing, the getup that Marjorie Taylor Greene wore when we had this innocent woman that was killed. I believe it was back in 2018 and 19 under the Trump administration. So I brought up her name, and I don't like using these instances to score political points. We do have a crisis at the border. I agree. We have problems at the border. We had a bill, a bipartisan bill. If people don't agree with it, that's one thing. But the bottom line here is say her name about this woman who was tragically murdered. Terrible tragedy. These Republicans are trying to use her death to score political points, and I find it disgusting.
I'm trying to remember. I think it was Kate's law under Donald Trump. When after Kate, I forget her last name, she was murdered in California by an illegal alien, and he passed Kate's law. I remember it was at the State of the Union. He brought her family there. So Trump never ignored crimes committed by illegal aliens. And look, I know there's effort to call people migrants or undocumented aliens. Whether they're legally or illegally present in this country, they shouldn't. The ones that are criminal aliens have no right to be here. These people were given asylum and then they committed crimes when they came to our country. They should be immediately deported, not sent around the country to inflict pain on other people's communities.
I don't disagree with you. My problem I have is that Republicans, MAGA Republicans, sat at the table and put together a bipartisan bill that many MAGA Republicans were all for. And then when Donald Trump, Orange Man, picks up the phone and he says, don't pass the bill, some of the people who actually put the bill together and signed off on it were going to vote for it. And then they voted against it because of Orange Man. That's not make America first. That's make Donald Trump first. And I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, I don't know how much time I have. There was H.R. 2, and I'll say this very, very quickly because I'm sure you have to go. Yep. H.R. 2, by the way, was passed before that other piece of legislation by the Senate. And H.R. 2 would have actually secured the border. It died at the Senate. They refused to take up the bill. The latest iteration of this, which they got some Republicans to go along with, had $65 million for Ukraine, billion for Ukraine, and $25 billion to secure the border. In that quote unquote border bill, there was 3 times as much money for Ukraine's border than it was for our own, which is why Republicans didn't support it. So,
well, there were MAGA Republicans that did support it. That's the point of Lankford being one of them and others. Yeah. Well, they did, and then they changed their mind, not because they're the ones who helped put the bill together. They only changed their mind because of Donald Trump, and that's why it's the Donald Trump party. Hey, before I go, David, give out that information. I always appreciate when you come on. You got a great podcast. Tell us a little bit about it and how people can follow you.
Yeah, sure. You can go to thedavidpollackshow.com. You can follow me on Twitter at The Pollack Show. I'd love for you to come and engage and tell me I'm an idiot. I love it. It's fun. It's how we it's how we grow, and it's entertainment.
I get that every day, man. I get that every day. I'm still trying to get George Santos on the show, and his people declined because they think I would be too mean to him, which, by the way, I wouldn't. But hey, what are you going to do? Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
I'll talk to him. We'll see what we can do.
I would love to have him on, and I would treat him with respect. I would. But I thought you did a good job in that interview. David, I always appreciate it when you take the time to come on. It's always a good spirited talk. And love having you on, my friend. I really do. I appreciate you, and we'll have you on again soon, okay?
Absolutely. Enjoy being here. Thanks so much.
Thank you. That's David Pollack, everybody, from the David Pollack Show. Always appreciate it when he comes on. I do want to take some phone calls when we come back. That was a very spirited conversation. I always, like a good debate, and David's a good guy. And I appreciate him coming on and having a good spirited debate in a respectful way. There's ways that we can disagree with one another and still be respectful. I have people, Ryan, why are you so mean to some of your callers? Well, because they say stupid things. Okay. They say stupid things and they misrepresent what I said. I'll be respectful to you if you're respectful to me. Just don't sound like an idiot. That's all I say. Phone lines are already going. Let me give out the number, 702-221-7283. And again, that number, if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, taking your calls, 702-221-7283. We're going to talk about Ronna McDaniel a little bit coming up next as well. We were talking about immigration, and one of my good friends, Leo, who runs Pioneer Air. If you really support this show, support what he does. New frontier in clean air, Pioneer Air, with the weather getting extremely warm coming up soon. If you call him right now, you'll get free scheduled maintenance. Just mention the name of the show for a year. Nothing extra. Free. Here's the number to call, 702-703-6346. Get your air conditioning system checked for free. Free of charge, no catch. Again, that number, 702-703-6346. We're going to take your phone calls when we come back, your reaction. You're listening to Push Any Limits right here on KSHP.
My name is Hunter Kane, and I'm talking with you for a call to action for our veterans in Clark County. Who is Hunter Kane? Well, I'm a decorated combat veteran, veteran community leader, and candidate for Clark County Commission. Do you know no veteran has served on the commission in nearly 30 years, which is why our veteran homelessness, unemployment, and suicide rates are out of control. So here's the call to action. June 11th, vote veteran, vote Kane for Clark County. Let's rally behind someone who's been in the trenches, who knows the sacrifices, and who's committed to making a real difference. Join the campaign by searching Elect Hunter Kane on social media or go to www.electhunterkane.com.
Did you know that 99% of air conditioning issues start with airflow issues? Well, guess what? Pioneer Air has your back. They've been operating for 20 years in the industry within the Las Vegas area, large enough to handle all your air conditioning and heating needs, but small enough to know your first name. Pioneer Air focuses on preventative care, much like wellness checks for humans. They believe in wellness checks for air conditioning and heating systems to extend the life of the system you own. So what are you waiting for? Schedule your wellness check with Pioneer Air today. The number to call is 702-831-4840. Here's the best news. Mention this ad and you'll receive 10% off. Call Pioneer Air today. 702-831-4840. That number again, 702-831-4840.
Voters want safe gun reform, ban military assault weapons, including AR-15s, have universal background checks, and red flag laws. I am Eva Chase, a candidate for Nevada State Assembly District 16, U.S. Air Force veteran, college graduate, progressive independent candidate, fully transitioned transgender woman, former lieutenant governor candidate for Nevada in 2022, where I received 7,212 votes in the Democratic primary. Follow me on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok. Donate to my campaign bot fun account and stay progressive.
Who would have thought there'd be so many kids playing ice hockey in the desert? Jake Helb's Hockey Foundation and the Las Vegas Ice Warriors, founded by Gina Yusufzai 8 years ago, made it possible for families who can't afford the equipment and fees. Donate today at www.hockeyforkids.org and help us continue making a difference. Join us in supporting Jake Helb's Hockey Foundation and the Las Vegas Ice Warriors, where every kid gets a shot at the starting line. Just a reminder, our website is www.hockeyforkids.org.
Residents of Las Vegas Ward 5, are you ready for a brighter future? I would like to introduce myself, Dr. Erica Smith, your People's Choice for City Council, with a vision for progress and the fortitude to make it happen. I am committed to moving us forward. I am not just a candidate, I am a fighter for you. With myself on the City Council, you can expect a real change and a community that thrives. Vote for Dr. Erica Smith, because together we're building a better tomorrow. To learn more about me and my campaign, go to www.ericaforlasvegas.com, paid for by the Vote Dr. Smith Committee.
Buying or selling a home is a huge life event that requires guidance from an expert in the industry and community. My name is Blake Wynn. You may recognize my name as my grandfather was the best governor the state of Nevada has ever had. Growing up in Las Vegas, I've come to know this community intricately. Now, I am raising a family here as well, so I understand all the issues impacting our home and quality of life. As the top realtor for the #1 real estate team at Keller Williams, you can have confidence in my experience, knowledge, and track record. When it comes to buying, selling, or investing in real estate, choose a name you can trust and someone who understands the community you call home. Call Blake Wynn today and experience the difference of a trusted expert. 702-540-3311.
All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining us. We're continuing to monitor this bridge collapse tragedy, horrible accident in Baltimore. Any new information, we'll share that with you. Obviously, the breaking news now, and it appears as though I was right, Ronna McDaniel has officially been let go. But I think it raises a lot of questions with MSNBC on why they would hire this woman to begin with. Some credibility issues. I can't imagine that CNN would have hired Ronna McDaniel. So this was an interview that McDaniel did on MSNBC yesterday. And I want you to have a listen to this clip and listen to how two-faced she is.
And you've been convicted, then that should stay.
So then, but to the question though, do you disagree with Trump saying he's going to free those who've been charged and
I do not
convicted?
think people who committed violent acts on January 6th should be freed.
So you disagree with that? He's been saying that for months. Ronna, why not speak out earlier? Why just speak out about that now?
When you're the RNC chair, you kind of take one for the whole team, right? Now I get to be a little bit more myself, right? This is what I believe.
No, you have zero credibility. You don't take one for the team. How about being honest? I understand if the RNC chair, you're going to be going after Democrats left and right. I understand that. But to defend the indefensible, which is something that you've done for years now, makes you despicable with zero credibility. And how MSNBC could have even thought about hiring this woman is insane. You want to get the other side. I get that. But somebody like McDaniel, who literally has zero credibility, listen to what Rachel Maddow had to say about this hire.
And so I want to associate myself with all my colleagues, both at MSNBC and at NBC News, who have voiced loud and principled objections to our company putting on the payroll someone who hasn't just attacked us as journalists, but someone who is part of an ongoing project to get rid of our system of government.
Yeah.
Someone who still is trying to convince Americans that this election stuff, it doesn't really work, that this last election, it wasn't a real result.
Rachel Maddow is 150% correct. By the way, I'm not a big MSNBC fan. I don't like Rachel Maddow very much. I don't watch her show, but she's 100% on the money here. Ronna McDaniel has gone on with the conspiracy theorist lies. They have no backbone and they have no soul. And the fact that they would hire her is absurd. Chuck Todd, who I do have some respect for, I've had criticism for him as well. Here's Chuck Todd talking about this strange hire, which now has been retracted, I guess you could say.
Let me deal with the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I think our bosses owe you an apology for putting you in this situation, because I don't know what to believe. She is now a paid contributor by NBC News. So I have no idea whether any answer she gave to you was because she didn't want to mess up her contract. She wants us to believe that she was speaking for the RNC when the RNC was paying for her. So she has credibility issues that she still has to deal with.
Yeah.
Is she speaking for herself, or is she speaking on behalf of who's paying her?
Great point. Well, because I was the Republican chair, I'm just speaking for them, and these aren't my real views, but now I'm on MSNBC, so I can just be me. Oh, please, give me a break. Give me a break, you pig. Give me a break. And then Lawrence O'Donnell makes such a wonderful statement and makes such a wonderful point about this woman, Ronna McDaniel, who literally changed her name because Donald Trump didn't want Romney in her name. You want to talk about selling your soul to the devil? Have a listen to this.
My first question would be, why did you change your name for Donald Trump? Before Trump ran for president, her name was Ronna Romney McDaniel. How does that feel, to change your name to curry favor with a madman because he doesn't like your uncle? How did you explain that to your kids? What lesson did your kids learn from that? And I mention her kids because she always mentions her kids and that she's a mother whenever she is speaking publicly.
Again, completely agree 150%. Such a great point. She changed her name because of Trump. I mean, does it get any worse than that? MSNBC made a big mistake and they lost credibility in my eyes. There's some nice people at MSNBC. You know what I appreciate about them? Joe Scarborough, Rachel Maddow, former employee Chuck Todd, and others speaking out against it, not afraid what their bosses might think. So I have respect for them for doing that, and I think that's part of the reason why McDaniel was let go. And she was working at MSNBC less than Scaramucci was working for Donald Trump, so that's not a very long time. All right, let's take some calls here. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Why don't we start off with Dave? Dave is first up on Pushing the Limits. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Brian. How are you doing?
Good. What's on your mind, Dave?
Good. I first of all have to apologize for losing my cool against Hamilton the other day.
That's quite all right.
I don't know how the hell you keep your cool with some of these people.
I don't always do,
And you
Dave.
don't with-
I don't always
you
do.
I know. And you didn't with him, and you called him out on all of his lies, but you could have called this guy out, Pollock, out today on some of his lies a little bit more, I thought. Can I go backward just a little bit about the what he was saying about the economy?
Yep.
All right. This whole business, and I have a personal theory about capitalism versus democratic government, and the two don't make a good marriage together. And that's what I taught when I was an American history teacher. It's very difficult for a democracy which guarantees the rights, civil rights of its people to have a marriage with capitalism which rewards greed. That being said, I feel like that presidents don't have a whole lot to do with the Dows or the economy. They just are spokespeople.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Him...
I agree with that to an extent. I completely, as you know, the presidents don't set the gas prices. I think I was paying like $5 or more for a gallon of gas when George W. Bush was president. But you know what? I wasn't blaming George W. Bush. But again, that's what Republicans do today. They try to blame Joe Biden for their hangnail. I mean, they try to blame him for everything. And yet they want to give Donald Trump credit for the vaccines, but the vaccines are poison. You know, they're hypocrites, and you can't have it both ways.
Yeah. The problem that, as I see it, is that they're against progressives, they're against socialism, they're against social programs. But then Mr. Pollock today was mentioning, well, it's Biden's fault because wages aren't keeping up with inflation. Okay. Where's your program? Where's the Republican program to protect unions, protect the workers' right to bargain, protect the workers' safety and the? You know where I'm going with this?
David, I know. I got to get to some other callers. I know exactly where you're going, and you made some phenomenal points up against the clock here. So I got to grab a few other callers. But David, you're 150% correct. It's a great point. You know, they'll complain about something, or Nancy Mace, the disgrace. She'll complain about the infrastructure bill, yet she'll tweet out to her constituents about all the money she's made for her community because of the bill that she voted against. You can't make this stuff up. 702-221-7283. Thank you, David, for the call. Let's go to Roy. Roy's next. What's going on, Roy?
How you doing, Brian?
Good.
A couple of things. One, just on Ronna McDaniel, whatever her freaking name is. She's like 90% of the other Republicans. Cruz, Marco Rubio, Nancy Mace, they're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
They just accept what he does. But Pollock made one point, which I disagree with totally. He said the things that Donald Trump is on trial for did not affect him. So based on that rationale, if Charles Manson were alive and he was running for president, which he would be allowed to be, okay, then he would vote for Charles Manson over Biden. Because after all, what Charles Manson did didn't affect him.
So, Roy, you make such a wonderful point there. You know, when I walk into a Target and I see people harassing me walking into a Target because they might be selling pro-LGBT stuff, Donald Trump is the reason for that, because he gave these people, in my personal opinion anyway, comfortability in their hatred. When I walk around town and I see how divided we are in this country, divided politically, divided racially, the hatred. He gave racists and bigoted people in this country a pathway to be comfortable in their racism. To say some of the things that Trump did didn't really affect me in a negative way, you're wearing the blinders on and you're complicit.
Yeah, because it does affect everybody.
Sure.
Another thing that this man said, which was totally wrong, he said that the top 1% of the job creators, and that's a lot of bull, the corporate tax cut that Trump took with the Republican Party back in 2017 or 18 created so much more corporate greed. And I've said this to you before, when they dropped that tax rate from 35% to 21%, it was like a license. Hey, we better accumulate a lot of money now because this cannot last.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And the top billionaires, they make more of their money on their investments, and until they sell them, it's not taxed. It's unrecognizable gain.
Mm-hmm.
So these millionaires and billionaires, they pay a lower percentage than people in the 12% tax bracket.
Roy, you're right. How could anybody say to themselves that they want a billionaire to pay a lower percentage than an American in this country making, say, $30,000 a year. How can anybody say that that's okay? And the excuse is, well, they're paying more taxes than anybody else. We're talking about percentages. I would like to see a billionaire raise up their percentages a little bit higher so that somebody making $30,000 a year is paying a lower percentage. That's how this economy should work.
$30,000 a year shouldn't even pay a tax.
I agree.
But let me tell you, I'm an accountant and financial person. I could fix the tax system in this country in 1 hour. Social Security, Medicare. It is so simple if they wanted to do it.
I agree.
You just have to have a fair system.
Roy,
and this is
I'm
what
with you.
Created
Yep.
The income inequality in this country today is staggering.
It is staggering. You're right. And guess what? I don't blame Democrats for that. I blame Republicans. Roy, I got to run to the next
Well,
caller. I appreciate your
you
call,
got it.
my friend. Thank you so much.
Take
702, take care. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Kava, who's next up on Pushing the Limits. Hi, Kava. Thanks for calling in. What's going on?
Hey, how are you today?
Good.
So I just wanted to say something. As a big Ravens fan, and to everyone in Baltimore, I am so sorry for what happened. It's a tragedy. It should never have happened.
Yep.
I have no other words, but because all the conspiracy theorists out there who are whining and say it's Baltimore's fault,
Yeah.
that's complete and utter bull.
It is.
I love Baltimore with all of my heart. I will defend them to the last of my breath.
Yep.
That's the first thing I want to say. Secondly, I don't agree with what your
Can I just? I'm sorry
earlier.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm going to let you finish, but I just want to comment on what you just said about the bridge situation. There are Republicans out there that are literally hosts of TV shows, Fox News, Maria Bartiromo, who tried to link this bridge collapse to wide open borders, which, by the way, they're not. A Newsmax host blaming the infrastructure bill. There are people that are blaming DEI because the company apparently that owns this ship might be pro-DEI, so they're blaming that and claiming that the person who was running the boat or the ship or whatever you want to call it might have been black and maybe wasn't qualified, a page from the racist Charlie Kirk playbook. They're blaming asylum seekers. They're blaming the Biden infrastructure law. These are some of the most despicable conspiracy theorist turds out there, and we need to call them out for it. They're despicable statements.
Oh, trust me. And I love Baltimore, and I know for a fact that this Baltimore community is doing everything.
Yeah.
And I mean everything in their power to defend their people and keep them all safe. So I have no doubt in my mind that Baltimore is doing the best they can. Are they perfect? No.
You have a good mayor out there.
Community? Are they the best community that I've ever seen?
Yeah.
1,000%.
Sure.
And last thing I want to say is, I don't agree with what your guest had said during his last thing that he had to say was about the immigration stuff.
Yeah.
He has no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah.
How are you going to blame immigrants for everything, but yet MAGA attacks the Capitol?
Yeah.
But yet it's okay when they do something.
Last I checked, it wasn't an undocumented immigrant in Texas, El Paso, that shot a bunch of innocent black people and in his manifesto talked about how much he loved Trump. Last I checked, there weren't undocumented immigrants that stormed the Capitol on January 6th that attacked police officers and were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Kava, I appreciate the phone call. I got to move on to some other callers. Thank you, sir. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Why don't we go to Barbette? Barbette is next up on Pushing the Limits. Hi, Barbette.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
Listen, number one, it's so good to see you again. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Oh, okay.
I wanna say right off the bat, I'm a black woman. I'm 76 years of age, and let me tell you, if anybody knows about racism, I have lived long enough to be on the ins and the outs and the brutality of it. But the reason I don't lose hope, the reason I don't throw in the towel is because people like you exist.
Oh, well, that means a lot, Barbette. Thank you so much. Yeah, you know what I try to do, Barbette? This is what I try to explain to people that are Elon Musk fans or Donald Trump fans when it comes to race. I'm white. The best thing that a white person could do is listen to somebody who is black that has different life experiences the way you grew up and the way I grew up. I understand that being white in this country is at times, sadly, a privilege. And as a whole, white people as a whole are not treated the same as black people. But you know what? I listen to other people. If you listen to racists out there, like the Charlie Kirks of the world, they'll or Elon Musk, who says, I don't want to talk about the past, I want to talk about the future. How complicit can you be? Who the hell are you to say, if you're the victim of a hate crime, if you're the victim of racism, I don't want you to talk about it. Let's just move on. That is the definition of a bigot and a racist who's not willing to listen to people like you, and I am.
Absolutely. And again, that's why I don't throw in the towel.
Right.
It's going to be okay. We're not going to implode. We've been through this before. If it not had been for the Antichrist, Orange Beast, because it's always there under the surface.
Yeah.
But like you said, he came out and gave everybody permission. Like, okay, kick ass, take names. Put on your Klan robes. Get that rope out.
Right.
But we're not going to fall for it. And again, I thank people like you. I really do.
Well, that means a lot to me, and I thank people like you as well. I'd like to think that there are more people out there like me than people out there like Elon Musk. I don't care how much money he has. When you die with no money. So I don't care how much money he has. There are complicit people out there that have never been the victim of racism or any type of bigotry at all. So they just want to pretend like it doesn't exist. Guess what? It does, and I will always defend people like you, any single time we're talking about these kinds of issues. And I so appreciate hearing from you. Please call back again soon, okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your kind words. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. That's 702-221-SAVE. Let's go to Mark. Mark is next on Pushing the Limits. What's up, Mark?
Hi, Brian. Hey, I listened to that prior segment with Mr. Pollack. And he very much is a lawyer. He basically did what we call a gish gallop, where he would put out so many generalized falsehoods that you wanted to stop and talk about one, and then he would do the typical misdirection, like, oh, no, we're going on to the next thing. And so it made it very hard for you, and that's understandable, to pin him down, because in fact, he rejected the idea of statistics. He wanted to go on feelings.
Yeah, Mark, what is it that Ben Shapiro said? Yeah, facts don't care about your feelings. I hate to quote that little weasel, but I will in this situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the end, what has to happen is that when you have people like that on again, when they make a comment, hold their feet to the fire on that comment and say, we're going to talk about this. You want to move on to something else, I understand, because you really don't have the facts. But pin them down. It's just terrible.
He made a lot of generalizations.
January 6th.
Yeah, he used a lot of generalizations too, right, Mark? I care about what people feel about the economy. Well, guess what? It's sad that people feel a certain way, but I care about actual facts of where the economy is at right now. The unemployment numbers, which are indefensible to attack Biden, when the unemployment numbers are the lowest they've been even before the pandemic. To blame Joe Biden for gas prices is somebody that doesn't understand basic economics. We had the largest amounts of profits for these oil companies. What was his response to that? Are you going to give Joe Biden credit for that? Are the oil companies saying, thanks, Joe Biden, we made record profits? No, it's corporate greed. Anybody who understands basic economics knows that, but they want to blame Joe Biden for the gas prices. How about the war in Ukraine? How about coming out of a pandemic? These are real issues that have affected. Now, listen, if gas prices were just up in this country, then I would say, okay, we need to look at this. They're up all over the world. It makes no sense to blame Joe Biden. No sense.
Oil is a world commodity, and the price for oil is set by the entire supply around the world. And he was going on about, well, Joe Biden destroyed domestic production, but that isn't even true.
It's not
you can look at the Energy Information Administration.
Listen, here's the bottom line.
And there's plenty of oil production.
Mark, here's the bottom line, Mark. Right, the countries that we compare ourselves to, the G7 summit, those countries that we can always compare ourselves to, we're doing better than just about all of those countries. So is that Joe Biden's fault too? Those are facts. Those aren't feelings. Their inflation is triple, quadruple where we're at right now. Gas prices are higher. So it's like, it doesn't make any sense.
If people want to respond constructively to the large issues, including climate change and all, instead of complaining about gas prices, there are electric vehicles, the vast majority of distance that people drive every day is well within the range of every electric vehicle on the market. And I drive past gas stations, I look at them and go, you know, instead of reacting to this, I'm glad I was proactive.
Yeah, no, that's another good point. Roy, it's good to hear from you, my friend. I appreciate your call. You have a great rest of your day, okay?
You too. Take care.
Yeah, we're up against the clock here, so I'm going to take one more phone call before we go to break. Then we have a guest coming in. Let's go to Carl. Carl, what's up? I got about 30 seconds, my man. What's going on?
Okay, Brian, I'll try to be real quick.
Okay.
As far as your girlfriend, Ronna McDaniel, you don't know the real reason. The real reason she was let go from the network, do you know the real reason?
Why is that?
She showed up in orange makeup.
That wouldn't surprise me any. I am glad. You know what? I'm going to give kudos not to the network because it's ridiculous that they even thought about hiring her. How about those people that are paid on the network? The Jen Psaki's, the Rachel Maddows, the Joe Scarboroughs. Hey, you think if Fox News hired a liberal that they didn't like, you think Sean Hannity and they'd have the guts to call it out? Of course they wouldn't because they're cowards. I give Scarborough and those people a lot of credit for speaking out against their bosses, and it worked because their bosses caved, and it was the right decision.
And one quick final point. You mentioned about the bridge, and you had some shows saying that, well, it's Biden's fault because of his infrastructure type thing. And the bridges are all rusty and all. Well, wasn't it just as rusty under Trump?
It was. And then Joe Biden did something called a bipartisan infrastructure bill, which, of course, Republicans don't want to give Joe Biden credit for. But when a bridge collapses and it's a pilot malfunction, I guess you could say, or an accident, they want to blame Pete Buttigieg. These people are such morons. Carl, good to hear from you, my friend. I appreciate the call. I'm up against a break. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and here's what we're going to do when we come back. And we'll take some more phone calls on the other side. We have a political candidate who is a open transgender woman running as a Democrat. The bigotry that she has to go through on a regular basis is mind-boggling. And I'm going to share a personal experience of a private conversation I had with a friend last night about transgender issues, and I want to get her thoughts on it. Eva Chase is going to be joining us in studio next. Take a quick break. Be back right after this with Eva. It's Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP.
My name is Hunter Kane, and I'm talking with you for a call to action for our veterans in Clark County. Who is Hunter Kane? Well, I'm a decorated combat veteran, veteran community leader, and candidate for Clark County Commission. Do you know no veteran has served on the commission in nearly 30 years, which is why our veteran homelessness, unemployment, and suicide rates are out of control. So here's the call to action. June 11th, vote veteran, vote Kane for Clark County. Let's rally behind someone who's been in the trenches, who knows the sacrifices, and who's committed to making a real difference. Join the campaign by searching Elect Hunter Kane on social media or go to www.electhunterkane.com.
Did you know that 99% of air conditioning issues start with airflow issues? Well, guess what? Pioneer Air has your back. They've been operating for 20 years in the industry within the Las Vegas area, large enough to handle all your air conditioning and heating needs, but small enough to know your first name. Pioneer Air focuses on preventative care, much like wellness checks for humans. They believe in wellness checks for air conditioning and heating systems to extend the life of the system you own. So what are you waiting for? Schedule your wellness check with Pioneer Air today. The number to call is 702-831-4840. Here's the best news. Mention this ad and you'll receive 10% off. Call Pioneer Air today. 702-831-4840. That number again, 702-831-4840.
I'm Eva Chase, a candidate for Nevada State Assembly District 16, former Lieutenant Governor candidate, Progressive Independent Democrat, U.S. Air Force veteran, college graduate, fully transitioned transgender woman. I support women's rights and veterans and unions and other progressive ideas. Please donate to my campaign on Spot Fund and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. Stay progressive, everybody.
Hey, everybody, are you struggling to find a pizza place that reminds you of Brooklyn? That true blue New York style pie? Well, worry no more. Stallone's Italian Eatery Pizza is a knockout. We're located at 467 East Silverado Ranch Boulevard, just off of Premier Road, half a mile east of South Point Casino, just minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. Come by and grab a slice of pie. Plus, check out our Brooklyn-inspired Italian cuisine. Our sandwiches are super hero, that is, because why be a sub when you can be a hero? Stallone's Italian Eatery is here to serve you phenomenal food, Vegas. Forget about it.
Who would have thought there'd be so many kids playing ice hockey in the desert? Jake Helb's Hockey Foundation and the Las Vegas Ice Warriors, founded by Gina Yusufzai 8 years ago, made it possible for families who can't afford the equipment and fees. Donate today at www.hockeyforkids.org and help us continue making a difference. Join us in supporting Jake Helb's Hockey Foundation and the Las Vegas Ice Warriors, where every kid gets a shot at the starting line. Just a reminder, our website is www.hockeyforkids.org.
Residents of Las Vegas Ward 5, are you ready for a brighter future? I would like to introduce myself, Dr. Erica Smith, your People's Choice for City Council, with a vision for progress and the fortitude to make it happen. I am committed to moving us forward. I am not just a candidate, I am a fighter for you. With myself on the City Council, you can expect a real change and a community that thrives. Vote for Dr. Erica Smith, because together we're building a better tomorrow. To learn more about me and my campaign, go to www.ericaforlasvegas.com, paid for by the Vote Dr. Smith Committee.
All right, welcome back. It's Pushing the Limits on a Tuesday. I want to tell you guys about my good friends at Jackson's Bar and Grill, located at Flamingo and Jones. Man, they got some great food specials. I had some chicken Alfredo over there the other day. It was like the best chicken Alfredo I've ever had. They got some great gaming specials. You're going to get some free play. Mention the name of the show as well. Tell Brian Slopok and the ownership there at Jackson's. I'm telling you, some of the best food I've had in Vegas, believe it or not, is at Jackson's Bar and Grill. I had the surf and turf, too, there last week. It was awesome. Great food, great atmosphere, great staff. It's just so much fun. It's laid back. My favorite bar in town, Jackson's Bar and Grill. Always appreciate everybody subscribing to the Occupy Democrats Network. Of course, my YouTube page, which is at PTL Radio Show, where I put up extra content every day. I actually put up some clips up today. Joining me in studio right now, she's running for District 16. She is an open transgender woman running as a Democrat, and you know her, Eva Chase, joining us in studio right now. Eva, it's good to see you as always. How are you doing?
Hi, Brian. It's nice to see you again. Thanks for having me back.
I'm a little jealous. You went to the Bruce Springsteen concert the other day, because I really wanted to see the boss, and I was unable to do so. That must have been a good time.
Oh, it was the bomb, man.
I'm very jealous.
Oh, okay. It was. Well, you saw the videos.
Yeah, they're awesome.
He rocked it, man.
It's a great show. Music is so. It heals us, you know,
Yes.
whatever issues we're dealing with in our lives, and we all have different types of stresses and issues. I know for me personally, when I go to a concert, I forget about all that stuff, and I'm just embraced and zoned into the music. So that must have been a lot of fun. All right, so I want to share a story with you, if I may.
Sure.
And it has to do with transgenders.
Okay.
So I'm speaking to a friend last night, and we get into these conversations a lot, unfortunately, because I don't enjoy them. But he showed me a video of a woman who is working out at one of those national workout facilities. I forgot the name. And she goes into the ladies' restroom, and she sees a man shaving in the female restroom, a man who identifies as a woman. So whatever you want to categorize it, that's fine. She takes out her phone and takes a picture of him. He had his clothes on, by the way. That's against the rules. And then she posted on social media, and she wants to cancel this workout facility because now their rules say that if you identify as a man or a woman, you can go into the bathroom of your choice, which, by the way, I don't have a problem with. And what I tried to say was, when I go into a bathroom, I'm doing my thing and I'm leaving. I'm not looking around seeing people. I don't care who's in the bathroom. I go into my stall or wherever the situation is, and I do my thing. And I don't care if you're a 12-year-old or an 80-year-old. I'd like to think that whether you're a child, and by the way, if you're really young, you should be going in there with one of your parents or a legal guardian. We're not looking around to see who's in the bath. Like, I don't understand why Republicans, I find it bigoted in nature. What are your thoughts on this? I don't care what bathroom you go into. The idea that some people say that somebody like you, Eva, is going to go through transgender surgery, which I would imagine is not fun and extremely uncomfortable and painful, so that you can go into another bathroom and maybe molest a child, is probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. What are your thoughts on this? Because I'm so frustrated. I said, I got to talk to Eva about this today.
It's a case of people just don't understand other people. And as with you, I'll relate a story to you that's kind of similar to what happened when I was first transitioning. I went into the restroom at Mandalay Bay, and I hadn't started much of my transition. I was just dressed as a woman and had makeup on and so on.
Right.
And I saw the attendant, and I said, I'm a transgender, and can I use the women's restroom? And she said, yes, you've got makeup on. I said, okay. So I went in there. Nobody stopped me. Nobody said I was trying to steal their child or anything.
Right.
And I think if I walked in a ladies' restroom and I saw a man shaving, I might be taken back, but there's a reason why he's shaving in there. It's the same reason as when I see women with small children and a woman has to go to the bathroom, she takes her 5-year-old boy with her to the women's restroom.
Right. And, you know,
Yes.
I'm glad that they treated you that way. This is the part I don't understand, Eva, is that Republicans, because let's be honest, the people that have a problem with people like you seem to be people on the far right. They're bigoted in nature. Nobody can provide me evidence that if you are transgender, you will have a higher chance of committing a crime in a restroom. Nobody can show me that sort of evidence. And until somebody can, they're morons and they don't know what they're talking about. They want to make you believe that people like you, sadly, are going to go into a woman's restroom so that you can sexually assault somebody. And there's literally no evidence to back up that claim. Could it have happened in this country? Sure. But the idea that someone born a man going into a men's restroom is more or less likely to commit a crime than someone who's a transgender is not true. And yet, find me the evidence of somebody who goes through transgender surgery so they can, as if there's a security guard at the front of the bathroom saying, no, 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 which there's not, that you go through transgender surgery. So the idea so you can look at children that are going to the bathroom is ridiculous. It's a farce, and it's another conspiracy theory put forth by MAGA Republicans who are bigots, right? Do you agree with that?
Totally, 100%.
Like, I don't understand these people. And I'm yelling at the top of my lungs last night to this idiot. At least in the conversation, he sounded like an idiot. And I say to this person, how have transgenders affected you in a negative way? I always ask that question to these people, and they don't know how to answer it. Because you know why, Eva? Because they haven't negatively impacted, maybe positively, they haven't negatively impacted these people that claim that drag queen reading is the sky is falling.
Right.
And it's like, I lose my patience now with these people, because unless somebody can show me actual real evidence, I don't want to hear their bigoted comments. If you want to be bigot and you want to look at transgenders and you want to think that they're child molesters or pedophiles, the same people that say Joe Biden sniffs kids, he's a pedophile, I just don't have time for you anymore. Life is too short. Go ahead and be about your ignorance and your bigotry, and good luck. Have a nice day. I feel sad for you that you're that stupid, because that's what it really boils down to. They're uneducated, stupid, bigoted people. And I know you're a lot nicer of a person than I am. I'm just saying that's who these people are. They're bigoted people in nature.
They are, and I still get it occasionally, even at work. I'll have some guy try to be a wiseacre and thinks he's cute and calls me, well, thank you, sir. And I say to myself, and I look at myself, and I say, do I look like a sir to you?
Yeah, it's about respect, right?
Yes, they don't give me the respect, but I don't. I let it roll off like rain. We've got, Brian, we've got too many bigger issues
to
worry about if I am personally insulted by someone who is threatened because I'm a trans woman.
That's their problem.
I can't help them with that.
That's their problem.
That's their problem. I've got bigger fish to fry and bigger things to do.
I do agree with you on that. It's frustrating, and you're absolutely right. Okay, so I'm going to open up the phone lines. Eva Chase is running for District 16 as an openly transgender woman. The number to call, 702-221-7283, if you want to ask Eva a question. Again, that number, now's the time to call in, 702-221-7283. Big national story, of course, this bridge that collapsed in Baltimore. Again, I hate to blame the right, but I will in this. They're blaming DEI. Some of them are blaming COVID vaccines, asylum seekers, and Biden's infrastructure bill on this bridge collapse. Eva, what do you make of that?
I think, well, barring something from about the 70s, I think they've been sniffing too much glue.
Yeah, you're probably right about that.
Because the infrastructure bill has created so many new jobs and so many new improvements with bridges and airports and railroads and highways, and it has hired more and more employees at a higher wage than some have ever seen in their life. And okay, it's an old bridge. It fell down. All right, the infrastructure bill will come in with the money to fix it. And we have a lot of old bridges in our country. It has nothing to do with COVID vaccines. It has nothing to do with immigration. What, did immigrants go in and just burn down the bridge? No, they weren't even there.
No, this was pilot error, as they say. And luckily, they had a Mayday call about 100 seconds before.
Sure.
And people's lives were saved. My heart goes out, of course, to the people who are impacted by this. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy.
Totally.
And again, Republicans trying to, score political points, to me is it's utterly disgusting. I think we'll agree on that. And
Totally.
it's just an awful tragedy,
Yes,
right?
it
I mean,
is.
I've never seen a bridge collapse, so watching the video of it was really daunting, I guess, for lack of a
Yes.
better term. But they have a great mayor out there. They'll recover, and they'll rebuild the bridge, and hopefully we don't see something like this happen again. It's really just an awful tragedy. All right, why don't we take some phone calls? Why don't we start off 702-221-7283 with Eva Chase. Let's start off with Frederick. Frederick is perched up on Pushing Limits. Hi, Frederick. You're on with Eva. Go right ahead, Frederick. Frederick just hung up the phone. Okay. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Fernando. What's up, Fernando?
Yeah, hi. It's Chase running for District 16. Is that in the wash?
Fernando, your phone cut out there for a second. Are you back with us?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Ask your question again. We missed it there.
Yeah, hi, Ms. Chase. I was wondering, you're running for District 16. Is that in the Reno-Sparks area?
Well, Fernando, no. Unfortunately, it's not. It's down here in Las Vegas near the Harry Reid Airport. But I do have state outreach. You can find me on any of my social medias, Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok. If you Google, or it's called X, but they now change it from Twitter. Twitter's now X. But if you Google Eva Chase LV, you will see my Ballotpedia profile, and you will also see my blue voters guide profile.
All right, there you go. Thank you, Fernando, for the phone call. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. And again, if you want to be a part of the conversation, 702-221-SAVE. We have Eva Chase in studio. She's running for District 16. Talked to her about some transgender issues and a conversation I had with somebody who is just bigoted in nature, in my personal opinion, who's concerned about what bathrooms you go into, which I find by the way, this person doesn't have any kids either, so I do also find that interesting. Telling other people what to do. It could be about this issue. It could be about abortion. There's so many different issues on the table, and I try to respect people's opinions. But what would you say to people out there in general that want to tell other people what to do? They want to tell gay people that they can't marry each other. They want to tell transgenders that you shouldn't be allowed to have the surgery. They want to tell all women in this country that you shouldn't be allowed to have an abortion. What would you say to these people?
You need to open your mind and your heart and think intelligently. Our country is becoming more diverse. And when I say this, I've nothing against, I might touch a nerve, but this is pushing the limits. I am not against white people. If you see me, I'm a Caucasian female. What I say is this: if you open your mind and you look at the other side of diversity, you will find that you will learn more, you'll be happier, and the country is changing. Whether you like it or not, it is changing. You've got to go with the changes, because if you don't, you're just going to cause discord and you're going to cause heartache for people that don't deserve it. Let's make the world and the U.S. a better place for everybody. Brian, there's so many issues we're facing, like with the Supreme Court and the abortion pill today.
Right.
It's going to affect 60% of women in our country, not just in red states, not just in blue states, but all states.
Right.
And that has been a very safe medication for 25 years. And then you have, in some states, they're trying to restrict the voting rights. Why? Your vote is your voice for democracy in this country.
Right.
Everybody, so long as you have the legal right to vote, you should be able to vote.
Sure. Amen.
And the same thing like with trans people like myself. Trans people like myself, we get discriminated against because people don't want us to live in their apartments, or they don't want us to work at their workplaces, or they don't want us to adopt children. Well, is that that's not a reason.
Right.
That goes back to, if you go back to the early 70s, and I don't like to talk about this guy, but I'll bring him up real quickly. Donald Trump in the early 70s with his dad used to have the C code on applicants for apartments for colored people, and they would not rent to colored people. That's racist, and that's bigoted.
And that's why Donald Trump, thousands of civil lawsuits, he lost many of them discrimination lawsuits way before he ever became president of the United States. And people want to claim that, oh, it's all political. All this stuff is political. Well, Donald Trump wasn't in politics back then. Why was he sued thousands and thousands of times? I also don't understand this idea that he's this wonderful businessman where he was given a $500 million company from his dad, who, by the way, was arrested at a Klan rally. That's who some of his family members are.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm not a professional in body language, but I can tell you Melania and Donald Trump don't seem like they're a couple that's in love. I could be wrong on that, but I don't know. Yeah, they don't seem like it. Are you interested in hearing about, like, do you think it's entertaining at all when assuming Stormy Daniels will testify in the Donald Trump hush money case, to hear about his sexcapades? Or do you think it's one of those things where we should just move on and it's nobody's business? How do you feel about that?
I don't particularly care about Donald Trump's sex life.
Yeah.
What I look at are the results of his actions causing negative problems for our country. And if you think about it, that was right before the 2016 election.
Yeah.
Now let's just do an example, Brian. Let's say we have a candidate running now that, let's say, they do something that they shouldn't do right before an election. And they try to cover it up by doing hush money to pay it off, have it sweep under the rug. Well, the American public, the voting public, the Nevada voters need to know if a candidate's got dirt on them, it needs to be out.
Right.
That's the only way that a voter can make an intelligent, rational choice for voting.
That's my next question, Eva, is one of the charges is alleging election interference, that the hush money payment was made, didn't want voters to know about it, and they're putting this clause in there. I guess they're calling it a new law, whatever the case may be. Do you consider that election interference?
Yes, because he gave checks to Michael Cohen in the forms of $25,000, and he didn't want that to be disclosed up until it was kind of close to the election. And there's a thing that at the federal level with the Attorney General generally doesn't release anything negative on a candidate 60 days before an election because it might sway it one way or another. Well, look what James Comey did to Hillary Clinton in, 11 days before the election.
Right.
Saw her numbers plummet, but she still won the popular vote. She lost the Electoral College. But she might have won in 2016. It hadn't been for James Comey.
Right.
But we'll never know.
Right.
That's like saying the Red Sox would have won the World Series if Bill Buckner hadn't let the ball go between his legs.
That's true. Speaking of which, what do you make of this Dodgers player that is now, he's claiming that he didn't make any sports bets or anything like that, yet it appears as though his agent, or no, I should say his interpreters, claiming lied, and it's a crazy story.
Well, if he did do sports bets, he better come clean, because he could be kicked out of baseball. That's what happened
Agree.
to Paul Hornung
Yeah.
in the NFL.
Pete Rose. Yeah.
Pete Rose.
Yeah.
Great player, but can't be in a Hall of Fame because he gambled.
He's claiming he didn't. If the evidence shows that he did, if there's
Yeah.
any evidence that he placed any bets at all, he should never be allowed to play baseball again. That's my
Totally agree with that.
personal opinion. I want
Yeah.
you to give out the information, Eva. How can people follow you, follow your campaign, follow you on social media, and make donations to your campaign? How do they do that?
You can find me at Eva Chase or Olivia Chase on Facebook. You can find me also on Eva Chase LV on Instagram. No, that's Chase Eva Olivia on Instagram. Eva Chase LV on X and TikTok. Ballotpedia uses Google Eva Chase and LV. Same thing with the Blue Voters Guide. You can donate to my campaign on my Spot Fund campaign account. And that's where I get my donations. I haven't gotten any donations, but I've put about $500 of my own money in there.
Oh, good. Okay. So, well, we want people to support your campaign, support what you do. Certainly, I support what you do. I appreciate you being here and answering what are, at times, some difficult questions, but important ones, I think, to have these types of conversations, Eva. And I do appreciate you being here, and I know you will be back soon. We'll have you in here in a few weeks. And appreciate it as always. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Look forward
Appreciate
to
it.
another visit.
Thank you. Subscribe to my YouTube page, everybody, at PTL Radio Show. Subscribe to the Occupy Democrats Facebook page. It's only $5 a month. We're going to continue to monitor this tragedy, this bridge collapse in Baltimore, and we'll have some very special guests joining us tomorrow as well. Thanks, everybody, for being here, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day.
Hey, everybody, are you struggling to find a pizza place that reminds you of Brooklyn? That true blue New York style pie? Well, worry no more. Stallone's Italian Eatery Pizza is a knockout. We're located at 467 East Silverado Ranch Boulevard, just off of Premium Road, half a mile east of South Point Casino, just minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. Come by and grab a slice of pie. Plus, check out our Brooklyn-inspired Italian cuisine. Our sandwiches are super. Hero, that is. Because why be a sub when you can be a hero? Stallone's Italian Eatery is here to serve you phenomenal food, Vegas. Forget about it.
My name is Hunter Kane, and I'm talking with you for a call to action for our veterans in Clark County. Who is Hunter Kane? Well, I'm a decorated